All right, well, thanks for coming, everybody. Every pony. This is the Effective Altruism, where kindness, generosity, science meet. My name's Gurf. Sometimes people call me Greg Sternot. And thanks for coming. And just, I told you who I am, so I'm going to make some quick assumptions about you. Chances are, if you're here and, coming to see this, chances are you believe at least a little bit in the core virtues that the main six represent. And you have tried at least a little to incorporate them into your life. And maybe you like to care for others, at least a little. Or at least chances are, that's kind of part of your DNA a little bit. And so, let's get this My Little Pony tie-in thing out of the way. We have our elements of harmony. None of them can exist in a vacuum, and they all share a common theme of caring for others. It's hard to care for somebody else who, thank you. It's hard to care for others when there's only one person involved. We all know what happens when you try to throw a party by yourself. You end up talking to turnips and all that. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's all about caring for others. And why don't we call this altruism? And just to lay a little bit of foundational framework here, let's say for the sake of argument, and I think it's most people would agree that it's good to be kind and generous and loyal and all these things in the show, but it's good to be altruistic. It's good to be kind to others. And I think we probably all agree here. It didn't line up. Oh well. I mean, these girls certainly agree. Fluttershy, instead of getting ripped to ribbons by that manticore, is like, yeah, I'll just show him some kindness and cool. And Rarity sang a whole song about generosity. She must be loaded, but I mean that is what it is. So altruism. I mean, it comes in plenty of forms. You can go volunteer at your local food shelter, or a food bank rather, or homeless shelter. Maybe it's spending time mentoring a student or taking care of a loved one, or going out of your way to help a stranger or a friend. Go visit them when they're having trouble, or just call up and say hi. You're still giving of yourself. Or if you're able to, then donate some money to a charitable cause that you believe in. And I mean, there's all these things, but they all share this common element of selflessly giving of yourself to add value to the life of another. So, value. What is value? Before we talk about value, we're going to talk about charity here at BronyCon. There's plenty of ways to donate to charities here at BronyCon already. The Brony Thank You Fund has they've raised over $200,000 to support a lot of different causes, cancer research, college scholarships, and they're registered 501c3 charities. So go down there, get their calendar. You get some discounts on the everything else in the vendors hall. So it's great stuff. Cure Search, they're the charity here. They're also into the children's cancer research, and they have this. It's an interesting education and grant-oriented approach. That's a little different than just here's some money and make me a gene. And one of the nice things about them is that they hold the awardees of their research grants really accountable to reporting their results and actually being transparent about everything that they're doing. So it's pretty good. They're also down in the vendor hall. Definitely would recommend checking them out. Great causes. But then you move outside of BronyCon afterwards and all the rest of the year, and there's you start looking around, and there's so many choices of all these different charities that you may find. I mean, there's so many charities supporting all these different causes, and I mean, how do you know which ones which charities have a positive impact? Are any just kind of really making matters worse? And are there causes that can have a positive impact on the world, or causes that can have a negative impact on the world? Sometimes it can be really hard to tell because there's a lot of information, and there's a lot of different. It's like a phone book here, and it's like, well, how do I know what to do? So, well, there's still one element we haven't talked about yet. We should determine which causes provide the most overall positive impact, and then which charities effectively support those. So, the causes and get the charities, put them together, and like, boom, if we could figure out what those things were, it would be a great breakthrough in the science of friendship. I really stretched with that quote there, so sorry about that. But I wanted to get science in there somewhere, and I think that's the only time that Twilight says science. But anyway, so science. So let's science this. Bam, math, science, right there. Value is, this is, very, very simple formula here, but it's very powerful. I work in orthopedic outcomes research, and we are looking for the value, the value of the healthcare dollar, and we often use this. We call it the Porter equation. It's published in New England Journal of Medicine, and yeah, it's just this simple thing. The value of whatever you're doing is some function of the outcome, whatever the intervention you did. What was the outcome of that intervention, and the cost? How much does it cost? Like the cost to your wallet, to society, to the recipient. I mean, there's all these different costs that are involved. But at the end of the day, the ratio of the two gives you value. Now, pop quiz, math. If we want to increase value, you can't see that screen, sorry. There are two things that you could do really quickly if you want to increase value. What would those be? Decrease cost and increase the outcome. Right. Yes. So those are two easy things you can do, and then you can draw pretty pictures to say, look, if we have outcomes, we'll plot that in the vertical axis, and we have costs on the horizontal axis, then if we want to use some science to figure out where we should be directing our time and energy, let's go where Pinkie Pie says, this is good. If there are some areas of indistinguishability where you have better outcomes, but it's more expensive, or you get worse outcomes, but it's less expensive to do that. And those are kind of the maybe categories, but and then obviously there's a normal category of the more expensive and the worse outcome that you just want to steer clear of. So simple, right? Well, it's simple, yes, but that doesn't mean it's easy, and it doesn't mean it's the full picture, and there's always hard reality that gets in the way, as it always does. Outcome. So I'm saying outcome. Outcome is great. What is it? How do you quantify it? I mean, what is it? And then cost. So there's dollar costs. There's cost to society. There's these intangible costs. There's also overhead. A lot of times people conflate overhead with cost and cost effectiveness. It's a factor in all of this, but it's not the only factor. But it's really difficult to explain sometimes. And then, you kind of just ask, is this just straight up utilitarianism if all we're doing is showing, this is what you should be doing because Pinkie Pie says so. I mean, I'm sure people have seen the or heard of the thought experiment of, you're standing on a bridge and there's this train coming down on the other side, and there's, some workers on a track over here, and there's 100 school children walking on the other track, and the train cannot be stopped. But if there's this very large man next to you, and if you push him off the tracks, you will stop that train from hitting all these people. So you sacrifice one life to save 100 or something like that. Isn't that great? That's totally worth it because you get the highest bang for your buck, but in the worst possible way. And in real life, I mean, we're not always dealing with situations of trains hitting people. So the whole thing of, well, utilitarianism has this kind of weird bent to it because morality is defined by that which increases everything for the common good. And can you really say, oh, it's totally moral to kick this guy off the bridge? I don't know. So if seasons 1, 2, 3, and 4 have taught us anything, when you got this problem that you can't solve, what do? You blast it with the royal rainbow of the elements of harmony. Kablam! So that's going to solve all the problems. So let's pull out 3 of them. We had to extract them from the tree of harmony because otherwise it's not going to grow anymore. So that's bad. But let's take a look at these 3. Kindness. So we talked about this morality. It would be nice if we had our own moral compass, And I think kindness is going to be our moral compass for that. And then obviously if we want to be making an impact, we need to have some drive and some ability to give, be it monetarily or with your time and your attention, which are also two very precious resources that we all have. And then finally, there's the science. Science, which is, we're going to say this is the most powerful tool that mankind, or ponykind, has invented to help us deal with these sorts of problems. So let's take these problems and throw science at them, and that's going to help us to evaluate the charities and the causes that they support and make sure that we have the right match. And in the real world, since we don't live in Equestria yet, the effective altruism is kind of the word for that right now. And if you go and you Google effective altruism, you'll probably find the first link, if it's not an ad for something, it's effectivealtruism.org. And rather than try to re-paraphrase everything and put a nice bow on it, they've already done it. So I'm just going to read what you can already read here. Effective altruism is about answering one simple question. How can we use our resources to help others the most? Because rather than just doing what feels right, we're going to use evidence and careful analysis to find out which are the very best causes to work on. And this is kind of where things diverge from, I don't want to say traditional giving, but I'm going to say traditional giving, in that it's not just which charities to be supporting, but which causes are going to drive the most impact for all of mankind, or ponykind. So, how many people here have heard of effective altruism before? Okay, good. So, those who haven't, I would actually recommend, if you're interested, I would recommend jumping onto YouTube and checking, punching effective altruism in there. And the first link that comes up is this guy named Peter Singer. He's a thinker and philosopher. He's been in this scene for a long time. He has some utilitarian roots as well, which is scandalous. But he had a TED Talk a while ago, and that provides a very good introduction of the basics and the basic topics of effective altruism. So I definitely recommend taking a look at that. But if I were to kind of distill that substantially, at the end of the day, it comes to we really need to use both our heart and our mind to make a difference in the world. Again, you can't do these things in a vacuum. You gotta put all of your resources to work. And what he really stresses is that there are some combinations of causes and charities that can really maximize that value equation we were talking about, several orders of magnitude more than others. So you say, well, what's an order of magnitude? Another math thing, but this is the difference between 1 and 10. That's an order of magnitude, and then 10 and 100 is another order of magnitude, and 100 and 1,000. So that's 3 orders of magnitude, as opposed to just like 3 times. And the human mind has difficulty really putting that into context. But you could say it's a difference between if I gave you $1, you'd say, oh, thanks. So you gave $1,000. It's like, wow, that's a lot. It's only 3 orders of magnitude. So what do orders of magnitude look like in the real world? Well, let's take a cause, for example. We'll take blindness. Based on a lot of numbers, and these are some of the things that Peter Singer goes over in his TED Talk. For example, for $40,000, that's about the cost it takes in the developed world to train a guide dog and get a person who is seeing impaired to be able to use it effectively. So $40,000 to treat one person for blindness in the developed world. Great, but can we do better, or how do we want to define better? Because for $100, you can completely cure a person of blindness caused from trachoma in a developing country in sub-Saharan Africa. Effectively cures any blindness, and then another 30 years of prevention of vision loss, which is, given around 60 is the median age over there, life expectancy. That's effectively an entire life. So $100, do the math, boom, that's, it's a 400 to 1 difference. That's 2 orders of magnitude greater, the impact that you're making if you want to say, well, what I believe in is, curing blindness. You might want to consider if really what you want to do is cure the most blindness. Take a look at treating blindness from trachoma in Africa. You'll probably never meet these people, but they certainly are going to get a lot of value from your generosity. So let's go back to that outcomes question. What are outcomes? In the medical community, a lot of times they use this thing called QALYs. QALYs, it's a quality adjusted life year. And that's really a measure of saying, if you have a debilitating disease and you get a treatment and it extends your life, you say, well, I got X number more years of life out of this treatment. But if, as a result, you are always in a hospital and you're always, your quality of life is not that great, then, well, you extended life, but it's not really great. So a QALY is when you adjust for the quality of the life, and a quality adjusted life year is saying this treatment is going to add 1 additional year of quality life to this person's life. And there's a lot of numbers that are flying around all over the place all the time, and you feel like a scumbag for putting a dollar figure on what is a quality of life. But $50,000 often pops up in literature as a lower bound estimate of what might be considered cost-effective care in the United States to increase somebody's quality of life by 1 year. So you give them 1 QALY. So what else? How about long-lasting insecticide-treated nets? Very, very different thing, but a lot of research has gone in that says if you distribute and you effectively distribute and educate people on how to use these long-lasting insecticide-treated nets in sub-Saharan Africa, that's going to prevent malaria, which kills a lot of people every year. And for $3,000, the continual distribution of these nets, that can save 1 person's life who would otherwise have died from this totally treatable and preventable disease. And this is at 3 orders of magnitude, maybe? And I put that question mark there because there's a lot of assumptions that go into these calculations, of course, so it's not necessarily, this is what it is, and then we're done. But it's clear that there's a very large difference here. And really that's what effective altruism is about, is to say, I mean, if these are some causes that you're interested in, there are areas where you can apply your talents and your treasure that will provide orders of magnitude more impact than if you did it, down the street or whatever. And so let's bust out those elements of harmony again, and we're going to say, kindness. This is the part about the compassionate giving, and the compassion. So somewhere in there, you're going to be passionate about some sort of cause. And there are a bunch of causes out there that you might do, but there's really some key ones that stick out above the rest as being the most effective ones. And prevention and treatment of diseases, often neglected tropical diseases, that's a really big one. The Against Malaria Foundation is a foundation, that's the one that one of several that distribute these long-lasting insecticide-treated nets. And that's where that $3,000 figure comes from. And they do a really good job, and they even go so far as to show you where your nets are being distributed, show you photos and videos of them being distributed, and it's really neat. There's a full feedback cycle in there. The Schistosomiasis Control Initiative, I said that 2 times fast. That is it's a parasitic worm. I can say worms, but it's a problem in a lot of developing countries. But a deworming initiative can have a very high impact on people's quality of life. If you deworm somebody when they're maybe 5 years old, then they don't get this disease, or with the insecticide-treated nets, they don't get malaria, and they go on to live a full and meaningful and quality life. So those are 2 ways. But let's say, okay, well, disease, I'm not passionate about disease. I'm passionate about poverty and hunger. Well, there's some very effective charities for that. Give Directly. This is one of my personal favorites, and the audacious question at Give Directly is, so instead of like telling the needy what they need, you need coats or you need nets, we just say, just give them the money directly, and they will know what they need. And as it turns out, they do know what they need. A lot of times, Give Directly, they work out, again, in Africa, a lot of people, they use the distributions from there, and they put an iron roof on their house, or they build a house, and you say, well, I don't want to just like build houses for people, but if every time it rains, you have to stop everything that you're doing because the roof is leaking all the time, that's not a good situation to be in. So Give Directly really, they use a lot of trials to find out, does just direct cash distribution to the extreme poor, A, make a difference, and B, does it just like end up going straight to alcohol and tobacco? The answer to that is no. So they do a lot of work in there. Project Healthy Children. There's macro hunger, I guess you could say, where you just don't have enough to eat. But there's also micro hunger, is the hidden hunger, where you might have a lot to eat, but there's no nutrients in there, or you're deficient in nutrients, and eventually, your belly will be full, but your body will be deteriorating. So Project Healthy Children helps to fortify the basic staples, like the rice and wheat and everything, with the vitamins and minerals that you need to have healthy children. Or you say, I don't care about human beings. Forget them. Let's save the animals. Did anybody recently watch the Summer Games Done Quick and all that with yeah, there we go. Are you in the Save the Animals or the Kill the Animals camp for the Super Metroid? Okay. In this case, with the passion, or the compassionate portion, we'll talk about saving the animals. But yeah, for speed, yeah, that's 30 seconds right there. But anyway, it's playing video games really fast for charity. They raise a lot of money as well. But if your passion is for saving the animals, you could do worse than getting the Humane League and the Animal Equality, two great organizations that really go into finding charities and increasing awareness and education on animal suffering and activism on that regard. And maybe you don't want to do that. You just care about the Earth. You're an Earth pony. I want this Earth to stay alive. Cool Earth, that focuses on climate change, and the Machine Intelligence Research Institute. That's all about research into artificial intelligence, and specifically how to make sure that artificial intelligence ends up working for us and not us for them. Not so much in the in the Skynet sort of way, but more in the way of you turn on the news these days and everybody's talking about the robot's going to take all of our jobs, every single one. Machine Intelligence Research Institute is really helping to make sure that we can mitigate that risk as much as we can. So let's go to generosity. It's great if you're passionate about something, but to some extent, you need some way of converting that passion into action. And generosity helps with that. Developing your giving muscle will help with that. And again, some resources that are really great on this front. 80,000 hours. This is an organization that they really encourage you to critically examine your career path and your decisions of what you're doing, what you're going to be doing in life, with an eye toward giving. And they had this really controversial thing they called earning to give, where they said, what you might consider is going into some field of work that is not necessarily seen as a particularly altruistic place. Finance, baking, and that kind of investing stuff, you would never think charity for there. But you know what you do make there? A lot of money. And if you direct that toward you direct it toward an effective charity, or instead of going out to the field yourself, you get enough of an income to impact or be able to hire 5 people to do that for you, that might be a better fit for you. Again, it's all about you. If you're just starting off in your career, or you're kind of in a point where your career is a little unsure and you might want to course correct a little bit, 80,000 hours, they provide a lot of practical guidance to really match your careers and these causes that could really use your help. Giving What We Can is another one. Giving What We Can, it's education and information about effective altruism. And they did a lot of number crunching, and they estimate that for every $1 in operating costs that they have, they inspire at worst 6, but probably closer to $100 of donations that would not otherwise have been donated to an effective charity. I think that's called counterfactual donation there, but the terminology gets a little funky. But let's just say, Giving What We Can has diverted a lot of money over into very effective charities that otherwise just would never have been donated in the first place. And they also have this thing they call the Giving What We Can pledge that says it's a lifelong commitment to donate 10% of your income to effective charities. Or if you're a student or you just want to try, you try for 1% and you see how that works in your life. And finally, let's get science. Science, this is where the rubber really hits the road. And two groups here really stand out. GiveWell for the human side of things, and animal charity evaluators for the non-human side of things. And really what they do, they maintain extremely short lists of the most effective charities addressing human suffering and animal suffering, respectively, really based on hard evidence, science, and research. So it's not, here's a phone book, pick your favorite charity, go for it. They have maybe 4 or 5 that say, I mean, if you're really interested in this is where all science and all evidence and all research points, where your time and energy and money is going to do the most good in the world, if your passion is aligned with that. And I mean, they go into just disturbingly wonderful levels of detail about all these things, and it's actually great. And they're extremely critical. I mean, charities, they might be really good, but they still say, you know what, there's always room for improvement. And they make these recommendations, and a lot of charities, the ones that really stand out above the rest, they make those changes, and they get better, and they maintain their place at the top, and they do the most good. And that's givewell.org, doing the most good. It really, encourages the transparency of all those charities. Like I was talking about with the Against Malaria Foundation, where you can actually see the nets that you purchased being distributed. I mean, that's kind of neat. And Give Directly, you can see what people are doing with all the money that you've given to them. And it's really inspiring and heartwarming to know that what you're doing is actually making an impact on somebody's life. And they do the studies, like the one about the alcohol and tobacco. They do these. They're some of the most powerful study designs you could do, a randomized control trial to figure out the answer to a single question. If you give somebody money, are they going to buy tobacco? No. I mean, here's all the data. Do the trial yourself. And every time it's been replicated, it's been shown that they don't. So that's the kind of rigor that they go through here all the time. In the Brony community, effective altruism is no stranger. How many people have seen the Seeds of Kindness charity album, or listened to it, rather? Yeah, we got a few of them. They got some good music there. The Bronies for Good, they're the ones that put out the effective, or the Seeds of Kindness charity album. Anybody get the Bound Together book? That was a really good comic. No? Okay. It was good. You could find it. I think they still have a few copies left. But it's like some community artists they put together. It's kind of like a comic book. Very good. All the proceeds go to the Against Malaria Foundation. But in the past, they've supported a lot of global causes, and now their current effort is the advocacy and support for effective altruism charities. I don't believe they're here at BronyCon. They're more on the Europe side of things. But if you ever go to Galacon or something, you'll find them over there. Now, just want to take a minute to kind of go a little bit into the criticism, I guess, about effective altruism, and really, everyone says, okay, well, that's all well and good, but all you're really doing is saying, look, there are some charities here that are worthy of your support, and there's other charities here that are not worthy of your support. There's people that are worthy and unworthy, and that's all you're doing in effective altruism. And it's really just a bunch of, Yeah, there's a little bit of truth in that, but it's really this pedantic posturing and charitable infighting between these different groups to say, donate to me instead. And at the end of the day, as people on the outside, looking at this, you're just seeing mud being slung all over the place, and you say, well, I'm not going to worry about that right now. So, to me anyway, this is just a driver of inaction, and arguing and infighting and everything doesn't actually produce results. It just makes people stuck. So my thought on that is that instead of thinking about what is worthy and what is unworthy, you have to ask yourself, because at the end of the day, only you can determine your own passions and what you feel are worthy causes to support. And only you can take action on these things. You can choose to not take any action, just fine. But you can also choose to leave the technicalities aside. And it's like, you know what? I'm going to go and find what really lights my fire, and I'm going to find what all the science and evidence right now seems to support. And you know what? I'm going to go and I'm going to take massive action toward doing the most good. Yeah, there are details, but sitting around is not going to help anybody. Taking action will help people. So I think the only way out of the logjam is to walk past the logjam and just keep going, and you can take some massive action. So let's take some massive action. Bam! Numbers. You love numbers because that gives you massive action. What we have here on the left, we're gonna take a look at the adjusted gross income of people in the United States. I think it's from 2014, and it's broken down by their income level. And if you look in the second column, you can say for all these different levels of income, there's the average deduction that they took from their income taxes that they allocated to charity. Now, this is most likely an underestimate because, not everybody is going to itemize everything on their taxes and say, yep, this is everything that I donated to charity. So this is almost certainly an underestimate. But you see this interesting trend, and a little counterintuitive, where those toward the top, where you have the lowest income levels, are donating a higher percentage of their income to charity. And this goes down as your income increases. And it's not until you're making some absurd amount, like more than $2 million per year, $1 billion per year, to get the percentage of AGI back up. And that's strange. So to kind of help break this logjam and this just inverted curve, Peter Singer, who we were talking about previously, he has a group called The Life You Can Save, where he talks about effective altruism, and he suggests a graduated percentage of your income can go to charity. So he crunched some numbers and came up with a very back of the envelope figure. Okay, it wasn't back of the envelope. He did a lot of work to come up with this number. But to say, if you want to solve global poverty, bam, this is how much it's going to cost. I don't remember exactly what it is, but it's not like $100 bajillion, and it's also not 12. So it's somewhere in the hundreds of billions of dollars. But it's something that is sounds high, but it's actually within our reach. And he said, if everybody gave this much of their income directly to solving world hunger, we could actually solve it pretty quickly. The weird thing that I see on that is that it assumes that the people at the very top are going to give, a third of their income to charity, which, historically really isn't the case. So giving what we can has a different approach, and they just suggest a flat 10% for everybody. And that really kind of moves the whole distribution down to the left a bit, toward the lower end. So you have a lot more people giving a little bit, and ultimately, you can make a world difference with 10%. You say, okay, 10%. What is 10%? So, giving what we can also has this. They call it the "How rich am I" calculator. It sounds very pretentious, but you say, let's take the average family of 2 adults and 2 children. We'll take the 2015 median family income from the United States Census of 56,000 and change. You plug it into this calculator, and given what we can, tells you, hey, look, even just the median American family here, you're in the richest 7% of the world. You may not feel like it, but you really are. That's 15 times the global average income right there, just for like a middle of the line American income. So 10%. What if this family donated 10% of its income to effective charities? How is that going to change their standing in the global income wars here? Well, you're still in the richest 8.4% of the world. You're still making 13 times the global average of income. And perhaps most important, you are saving, if you were to give all the money to the Against Malaria Foundation, 1 to 2 people every year would have not died specifically because of your actions. And that's per year. So you do that for 30 years. I mean, you got 50 friends over there that you may never meet, but they really owe their lives to you and to the Against Malaria Foundation and effective altruism. And not because okay, you're forever in debt, but rather we can all do better. We can all do better, and we can all live on this rock together. And it's wonderful to be able to have that the ability to really make a big impact. But then, so again, this it's 10% in perspective. What does that look like for me as somebody who is living in America? I mean, is that going to impact my life? It's certainly going to squeeze me a little bit, or a lot of it. I don't know. So let's throw more science at it. So back in 2010, there was a study. It took 450,000 results from a Gallup survey that went out between 2008 and 2009, and they really were getting socioeconomic and demographic information about a lot of people across the United States, 450,000. And what they wanted to do was kind of see, among other things, what is the impact of income and your overall quality of life. Effectively trying to, poke that very tongue-in-cheek, maxim of money can't buy happiness. And it's like, well, maybe it can a little bit, at least superficially. But we don't know, so let's find out. So they did that, and there's a lot of words and lines over here, but really they're looking at 4 things, 5 things really. Your income, the positive affect, and that's smiling, feeling happy, feelings of not blue, or not feeling depressed or sad or troubled on a day-to-day basis, and feeling stress-free, where stress here is defined as are you constantly thinking about things from the day before that are causing you stress. There's also this ladder that is the I think it's called the Cantrell self-anchoring scale, but they say imagine your life as a ladder, or life as a ladder, and it has 10 rungs, and where do you think right now you are on that ladder of life? So that's what that question is. And if you, so the results of this study here, after they adjusted for all these socioeconomic and demographic factors, they said, well, look, let's take annual income and toss it along the x-axis here, and this is a log scale, so each tick is twice the income. And these curves indicate that at the lower end of the income spectrum, you are under more stress, and you are smiling less, and you do have more heights of incidence of depression, and you do feel that you are lower on the ladder of life. And as income increases, it does go up. I mean, not a lot. We're talking maybe 10, 15% of people switch from the I'm stressed to the no, I'm not stressed, and that kind of stuff. But it does have a measurable and statistically significant and human identifiable difference, because statistics aren't always the answer. It's like, can you actually feel it in your gut? But if you notice, around $75,000, it's around this line right here, but it's kind of compressed because of the log scale. All the lines start flattening out, which indicates that there is some threshold where, yeah, money will buy you some happiness, but then it doesn't. And it happens to be around $75,000, but there's a wide margin around there depending on who you are and all this kind of stuff. And the reason that I bring all this up is because if you say, well, what is going to be the income, the effect of donating 10% or 1% or whatever percent of my income to a charity, what is that going to do to me? And really, it's not that much, all things considered. And any loss of happiness or something that you might get for not having quite as big of an effective paycheck at the end of the day, I would argue you're going to gain in the satisfaction of knowing that you're really making an impact on somebody's life. Just to make this a little personal, I decided that I would, take a look at my own giving history. I say, well, I think I'm a generally, altruistic fellow. But then I started looking at my numbers here, and back in 2009, I was at the, maybe less than 1% of my income was going to charity, and the average, based on the chart before of the income brackets and everything, was saying that, well, most people like me are doing around 4%, and I said, whoa, all right, I think I can do better. So I really hunkered down, and really looked at things. I said, yeah, I can do better. So over the years, got up a little more, 2%, 3%. It wasn't until 2015, actually, thanks to Bronies for Good, that I actually discovered effective altruism. And just for whatever reason, it really clicked for me. And I said, wow, this is amazing. And I believe in this. And I think this is great. So I was able to kind of eventually cross the threshold of where my peers were. And in addition to that, I started in 2017. I took that Giving What We Can pledge for the 10% of your annual income for life, and right now, as of right now, I'm around the 10% mark for this year. And the different colors there, the purple is money that is going toward charities that are considered to be particularly effective, the ones that GiveWell recommends and such. So there's, for me anyway, there was I was interested in increasing, but not just increasing my total amount, but also making sure that where I was donating to was going to the most effective place. And for me anyway, I have not felt physically or psychologically better ever in my entire life. And I think, no small part of it is by realizing, what, I think I can make a difference in other people's lives. And for me anyway, that really helped. And for us as Bronies, I think we're in a very unique position because, the average age of the Bronies, based on the Brony studies and the census, the Hurt census and everything, we are, in our low 20s, generally speaking. Although it's probably lower because 18 is usually, they don't ask people under the age of 18. So it's probably actually even lower than that. And so we have this generally young population, and we have people who are, generally more predisposed to kindness, generosity, and who like science and nerds. Any self-identified nerds in here? Card carrying? Yeah, that's what I like to see. And so, we have all the things in our community right now that allow us to, jump on this wagon here and just be like, look, we've got an extremely long time horizon by which we can invest and save and make the right choices to ultimately allow us to give in the future. And so if we secure our own futures right now, that really sets us up for just massive amounts of good for the world in the long term. Now, it might not be today, it might not be tomorrow. Maybe you're sitting around, man, I got $3 million burning a hole in my pocket right now. Let's do things right now. If you do, that's awesome. I can give you some recommendations. There's also the charity auction tomorrow on Sunday. So, but how many people flew here? Okay, we got Cynthia. I also flew. And what do they always tell you at the beginning? Secure your own oxygen mask before helping others. So when it comes to this kind of stuff, I think it's doubly important to make sure that you've secured your own oxygen mask before you try to before you go start helping others. And here's some things that have helped work for me. And I think pretty much anybody, any financial website that you find on the internet is going to tell you something similar. And really, it kind of comes down to three things. You really want to prioritize saving to the extent that you can. And sorry, the text got a little small, but really, if you're employed at a company that provides a workplace match for your retirement, make sure you match that if you possibly can, because that's really just free money right there. And then it's also important to have this establish an emergency fund, at least 6 months, 9 months, something like that. Some rainy day fund that will allow you to. Well, rainy day fund is different. Emergency fund to make sure if some disaster should strike or you do lose your job or something, that you will not completely fall flat. Then next up, if you're still able to contribute to yourself here, we'd recommend maximizing contributions to a Roth IRA if it's applicable to you, and that's after you've already paid taxes on this money, you can invest it and it will grow tax-free, or rather, you don't have to pay taxes on the principal anymore, just the interest that you get later. But again, it's for retirement. And then, after all that, if you still have anything left over after that, then you can focus on taxable accounts. I'd say focus more on like low expense index funds or ETFs and that kind of stuff than trying to do the daily stock market thing. Unless you have a computer set up with 10,000 monitors all over and you're looking at the matrix and figuring out, oh, we're gonna buy this, boom, millionaire. If that's your thing, by all means, go for it. Another thing, deprioritize spending. And at the end of the day, you gotta really be honest with yourself and say, what am I spending all my money on? What do I say that I wanna do? And then what am I actually doing? And if you actually write things out and you draw things out and you take a look at it, you say, well, these are the things that I think that I say that I'm doing, but this is what my bank account says, or this is what my checkbook says. I guess nobody uses checks anymore, probably. And that's really going to allow you to scrutinize your spending habits. And anything that's not bringing joy to your life, let go of it. Just absolutely let go. Do you need that super Netflix subscription? Do you get joy out of it? If yes, keep it. If not, if you haven't turned on Netflix in 6 months or something like that, get rid of it. There's a lot of money that you could be saving and investing in yourself instead. I, as I'm sure many people here have, a lot of plushies, or one or two just like really, really nice ones. And, does that add value to my life? For me, yeah. I wake up every morning and I look at it. It's like, man, it just fills me with so much happiness for the day. So for me, that definitely adds value to my life. And if at all possible, try living below your means. If there's less money going out than there is coming in, eventually it's going to start accruing. And then the third point, just abhor debt. I don't know if anybody here listens to the minimalists at all, but they have the saying, there is no such thing as good debt, to which they then say, there is no such thing as good debt. There's no such thing as good debt. So if you do have debt, credit card debt, student loan debt, car payment, any of that kind of stuff, just pay that down as quickly as possible. I mean, that is money that is going to just eat away everything as quickly as, or at a very high rate of speed. And then if possible, steer clear of it forever. I know it's not possible for everybody, and if you're a student and you have student loans, that's just kind of part of that's what happens in America. I had a lot of student loan debt when I was just getting out of college, but focus on paying it down as quickly as you can, and that just really frees you from a lot of artificial shackles. After you secured your own oxygen mask, then you go start helping others. And how can you assist others? Well, first you really have to decide or discover what it is that you feel very strongly about. And then after you do that, it's no good just to sit there and it's like, I want to save the animals, or I want to kill the animals. But you got to take action. You actually got to start doing these things. And so research the most effective charities for your cause. And don't take any horse apples. I mean, if they're just like, yeah, we're great, yay, or whatever the Trixie was doing. But it's like, okay, well, show me the data. And they can't provide any data, maybe go somewhere else. So try givewell.org, because they'll tell you. And then really, at the end of the day, don't let somebody else tell you what you should be interested in. I mean, you have your own moral compass. It's not a map. It's not going to say, you walk forward here, you stop because you're at the edge of the stage, and then you're going to turn 90 degrees and you're going to continue this way. Oh, but you got to go around it again. It points you in the right direction, but you have to do your own course correction. And if your moral compass is telling you to go this way, take a look down and watch where you're walking. Well, I might need to take a detour, but as long as I got my compass here, I've got an idea where I'm going. And start small. Maybe 10% is not going to work for you right now. Maybe 5%. Maybe you can try 1%. Giving what we can suggests, if you're not sure, or if you're a student, because you do have a student debt, start small. Start with 1%. Whatever you're comfortable with, and work up from there. And then try to increase that goal each year. And it doesn't have to be money. It can be your time or your attention. I never did any real meaningful volunteering or anything. And then I said, you know what? I'm going to try. There's the Cleveland Food Bank nearby. I live in Northeast Ohio. Hooray. And I'm going to just volunteer there. I'm only going there 1 hour a week, 2 hours each time, once per month. So 2 hours per month. And right now, I feel good about that, and maybe I can increase that later on. I know it's not too much, but I do plan to increase it. And then whatever your goal is, stick to it. Increase it if you can, and stick to it. So I mean, really, like, incorporate this giving of time or money, energy, whatever, into your monthly budget, and really stick to it, and practice that discipline until it becomes a habit. I never, waking up and doing things first thing in the morning is a pain. But now, if I don't run 4 miles when I wake up, it's like, it's like breaking this habit, but I want to keep it. And finally, if it helps, try to make that commitment public. Sometimes you can have the self-discipline to do all these things, and it's great, and you're able to stay self-motivated, but sometimes it really helps, again, not in a vacuum. There's other people who also have the same thing, the same idea. Maybe they're trying to do the same thing. There's other people who, like, they're your friends, they're your family. They love you, they want to support you. And if you can say, hey, I want you to hold me accountable for this journey that I'm on, that can be really empowering, and that can really help to get you interested and keep you going. And again, if it helps, consider that Giving What We Can pledge, or the Life You Can Save pledge. My name is publicly pasted on that Giving What We Can website, and there it's going to stay. So that's part of my self-motivation to keep going, because I'm asking the world to keep myself accountable. And if anybody is interested in getting an accountability partner or something, talk to me. They'll be interested, or it'll be interesting to try out. So after hearing all these word sounds dripping out of my face, I hope that you believe at least a little more in these the core virtues that the main six represent, and we'll try at least a little bit more to incorporate them into your life, knowing that they can really make big impacts on the lives of others. And after hearing us, I hope that you can more effectively care for others, even just a little, because as Pinkie Pie says, you got to share. I won't go through the whole thing, but it really does help, and it really makes you feel good about yourself. And I think that's what as bronies we're called to do. So I'll leave here. I think we have a little bit of time left. There's some resources and the credits for the artwork that we used here, if you wanted to take down some things. But I don't know if anybody had any questions in the few minutes we had left. I can try to answer. I think we have a mic, or if you shout loudly, we can get it. But good. I think I saw your hands first. Yeah. So I believe the answer is yes. The website itself, they have a very good like FAQ, and I'm sure that's buried in there somewhere. But really, GiveWell focuses on, or they recommend self-nomination. So an organization goes out and really says that we're doing good. So I want to make sure, you know, I want you to scrutinize me. To the extent that government, you know, funded organizations are, or public organizations are going in and doing that, I'm not sure, but I believe all of their top recommendations are private organizations. I mean, you know, not for profit, obviously, but they also have massive global backing, perhaps from governments, but I don't think it's any straight up government organization. But I would encourage you to go, you know, check out the website and find out, because that's interesting. Yeah. So I think yeah. Sure, sure. So, giving what we can is a good idea, or is a good resource, but that does just kind of like show what GiveWell already, you know, does. But Effective Altruism and 80,000 Hours on the list here, those two websites, they branch out, especially 80,000 Hours, they branch out to a lot of interesting places that I never would have thought, like the whole machine intelligence thing, I never would have thought of that before. But they do provide some additional you know, guidance as to what you might look at. So I'd suggest 80,000 Hours. Start with there, and they go into very interesting spheres outside of just what GiveWell recommends. Yeah, all the way in the back.
Sorry to do a little quick personal promotion, but it is on topic, sort
yeah.
of. In the Pratt Street lobby, you might notice a couple of cardboard boxes there that have Ziploc bags in them. I encourage anybody to pick up a few. They're for if somebody asks you for a handout, you have some of those there that you can give somebody that instead of just money. We haven't been rated by GiveWell, but I'd love to know how well it works. I mean, we try to do a little bit of economy of scale in it. But.
Sure. Yeah. So for those listening at home, there's boxes around that are that have bags of is it like money or food and supplies? Oh, okay, yeah. Excellent. Yeah.
You know, yeah.
So grab them and give them a shot. I mean, I know I always am like, I don't know how do I respond in this situation, but I think that's a wonderful idea. You said it's on the Pratt Street.
Pratt Street lobby, like top of the stairs.
At the top of the stairs. So pick one up. It'll be good. We'll do some science, see how it works. So we have time for one more. Time for one more. Over there. Sure. Poverty Gate? I'm not, unfortunately. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. That's an. Sorry, the noise from outside is coming. What was that? Yeah. Yeah. So the question was about like if you give rice to people, that's going to destroy the local rice economy, or if you give clothing, that's going to ruin the local textile economy. That's kind of what that goes into. Yeah. Yeah. And I've seen similar things. I haven't seen that one in particular, but similar ones, and it's fascinating stuff. These are what GiveWell does is they do look at that. They do look at that, and they emphasize the ones that don't destroy the local economy. Giving money to people directly, for example, that can cause some, resentment and maybe some tribal, pressure and things like that. But they do a lot of research to make sure that they're not promoting causes that are going to promote this, charity gate, as it were. So. Well, thank you very much for attending. I hope I've inspired maybe one of you. If you're interested in any more, I mean, I'm not an expert by all means, but I mean, please talk Gurf@thegurf.net. You can find me on Twitter, Gurf. And thanks for coming. I appreciate your attention and time.